All right. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Let's take this off, right? Yeah. Okay. And okay, so we're going to my second slide. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so how do I progress it?
Let me. I almost forgot what I'm working on. I think you're good to go.
Wonderful. Okay, so how do I progress it?
So, this guy.
Okay. Yep. Great. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Hey, welcome everybody. Come on in. We're going to get started really soon because I have a ton of material. So we're going to plow through and learn a lot. Okay.
Whoa, look at you.
I'm very loud.
You want me to introduce you?
Sure, if you want to, or I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right.
Fast, got a lot going on. So, okay, welcome everybody. Super glad to see you here tonight. My name is Sally Hatcher, and I was with the university for 4 years as a senior director of venture development, which means I love startups and I love entrepreneurship because of what you can do with it and what you can build and how you can change the world. I just left, so my new job is as a general partner of our brand new Buff Venture Fund. So I am very excited to let you know that CU now has a fund. So this is really great. And it all came about because we have more and more startups on campus that are fundable and that need venture capital. So I want to talk about tonight how to build a great pitch for the New Venture Challenge. And first question, who can relate to any of these comments on here? Are you a person who hates public speaking? Do you just really hate talking to people about what you're doing and you'd far rather send it by text? Do you have trouble just talking too much? You start blathering and you can't get through? Those are all public speaking problems that you've just got to get through. And why is that? Because you need to learn to give a great pitch. And what's so important is this is not just for the New Venture Challenge. Pitching is really a form of communication these days. It's definitely the form of communication for startups. And you will be expected to take your ideas, distill them into about 12 slides, and be able to talk about them with an audience and persuade them with a story about what you're trying to do. So this is a terrific skill to have in your back pocket. One of the things that I talk about a lot is that this is not just about starting a company and building it huge and going global and making tons of money. I certainly hope you do all of that, but it's also about taking some idea that you have that you think is really important and getting it out there and getting people to adopt it. So as an example, just yesterday, I was on the phone with a venture capitalist on the East Coast. He was super excited because Google had picked up some technology from NREL. And the technology is when you're using your Google Maps, it'll give you alternative ways to go. Google is going to rejigger their algorithms. So if you could go equal time to one point, they're going to give you the most energy efficient way to go as the primary way to get there. So that is huge from a carbon perspective, and it makes a really big deal. And the super interesting thing about that is that, I worked with that NREL team, and they were a couple of green, young grad student scientists down at NREL who love their technology. But, they were like, well, we want to make an app and we have no idea how to compete with anybody. And we're going to go talk to trucking companies and figure this out. And the fact is that they talked to a lot of people. They figured out that really they can't outcompete Google, but if they can get Google to do what they want and to pick this up, they're really going to have a phenomenal impact on decarbonization. So that's what I love so much about the skills of entrepreneurship. It's about learning how to focus on what you want, learn to express it, and getting other people to do what you want and close the deal. So that's why we're here. Really important point. If you can't express what you want, then you're just not going to get anywhere. You need to have the audience understand what it is you're trying to do. So, and just a quick call out, I came across this picture. I love this freaking picture because she's giving a Zoom presentation. We don't know where we're going to be in, the various start points along the way of NVC. You may be having to give a Zoom presentation. I love it that this woman has practiced so much for Zoom. Her face is front and center, and she's learned to speak to the little dot because her eyes are focusing on the audience. So this is a really important point, is that understand where your audience is. And if you're going to have to give this on Zoom, practice with the Zoom so that you give a really clear presentation into the computer. Okay, so what makes a great presentation? 3 things. First of all, good material, good idea in a story. It is super important to engage your audience in the story of what you're doing. And we'll talk a lot more about that. Second is great presentation skills. And the third is seriously a lot of practice. So this is so worth doing again and again while you're brushing your teeth, while you're walking around your house. Practice speaking, practice cutting yourself off. If you say 300 times, practice dropping that. Build your confidence with just how you talk about your story, because it's going to be much more fluid in the end. And I'm going to show you the judging criteria for the New Venture Challenge. It's only about 25% for your presentation skills, but your presentation skills affect how they hear everything else that you do. Okay, so this point of, is it a story, is so interesting. Psychologist says that if your ideas are in a story, they are 22 times more likely to be remembered. That's a super big deal. So if you come to them with a mechanical contraption, if you come to them with an algorithm that does something, if you come to them with an app, if they can't understand what the problem is that it solves, they're not going to be hooked. They're not going to be really interested. So part of what you are trying to do is build a 5-minute presentation that tells a story about how you are solving a problem. So I'm going to hit that again in just a minute. Let's walk through this framework. And again, I'm going to show you approximately, I think I've got 12 slides in here. Pitch decks are usually around a dozen slides. You can Google on the internet and instantly come up with many other forms of this, very small differences. Like I looked at Y Combinator over the weekend, slightly different pitch deck. Part of the issue there is that Y Combinator is an accelerator that's trying to pitch for millions of dollars in funding. And you're not quite there yet. New Venture Challenge is fundamentally about having really good ideas that could be executed on. So, the Y Combinator has a little more on financials and things that I don't think you need. So I'm showing you what I think 12 great slides are. There are others. I will be sharing this deck. So feel free to take notes if that helps you remember stuff, but you can also pick up the deck afterwards. Okay, so let's just walk through these slides. First one is your cover slide. And please don't think of it as a cover slide. This is your first chance to engage the audience. Okay, so sometimes people show their team if that's what's really exciting about them. A lot of times they use a value proposition. And a value proposition is the basic idea of what are we doing that helps people. So I'm going to just give you an example real quick. This guy's Jacob Siegel. He is a 4-time entrepreneur on campus. I love everything that he does. And this was idea number 3. He's now on to the next one. This was really neat. He helped, he's a mechanical engineer. He helped a doctor down at Anschutz who had to displace hips in surgery so that he could do a hip replacement really fast. And it was taking too long. And it was, I'm sure, incredibly painful. So even though the person was under anesthesia, he needed a better way to do that. So Jacob helped him. And what the title they came up with, that value proposition, is targeted hip preservation. So kind of a neat way to cue up the idea of what you're doing that helps people. I typically think of this as 4 words, and it's kind of like your tweet of can you tell me in 4 words what you're actually doing? So I'll tell you also, if you want homework for tonight, try your 4 words to describe what you're doing. I'm going to show you one more. So this is Luminastra. This is another campus one out of Zoya Popovic's lab in the engineering school. And she calls it measuring the warmth within. So again, what they're doing is pretty cool. They're taking a surface measurement, but they are measuring your core body temperature. So they thought about this a lot and ended up going with measuring the warmth within. So play around with this. It's really interesting to think about, can you describe articulately what you're doing in just a couple of words? Okay, so slide number 2, a catchy statement of the status quo. A lot of people start this way, and it reminds me a little bit about 9th grade English book presentations, where the person stands up and she describes, she gives a quote out of the book that she's describing. So some people really like this. Some people use slide number 2 as a hook to catch people's interest. Did you know that only 1 in 5 pieces of plastic that you throw in the recycling bin is actually recycled today? So some kind of hook that sets up your problem or catches people's attention. So again, think about this in terms of a story. Your audience is a bunch of people who are really happy to hear you, but they may be watching 10 different presentations in one night. You want to stand out. So you want to grab them early with what's catchy, what's interesting, what's something special that you might not have thought about. So what's interesting? Like, why are you doing your mechanical engineering project? Why are you doing your capstone? What's interesting about it? And that's what you want to describe. So this is, in my world of deep tech and engineering technology, this is the most important slide. So what is the real world problem that you're solving? So, and I think that this is really important. So I'm going to talk from an engineering perspective for a minute and then come back because it's easier for everybody else. From the engineering perspective, if you're doing something that's really cool on a breadboard, you're solving a really interesting problem, but it may not be important to the whole rest of the world. So what typically happens in the engineering school is you invent a brilliant solution, and then you go looking for a problem to solve with it. So I have a new actuator on a new robot that does something really cool. Well, who needs better robots? Well, everybody needs better robots. that's an impossible value proposition. So everybody listening to you is not going to intuitively understand why every industry on the planet needs better robots. So you need to be really specific, not about your technology or not about your solution yet, but about your problem. So what's the problem you're solving? So for instance, again, this problem of trash, do you realize that 80% of the plastic you think you're recycling is going into the ocean? Give something that's the real world problem. For business school, this is typically easier. And for arts and humanities, this is a lot easier because you're always coming to it with a problem that you want to solve in the world. So, we have seen many pitches on, which watering hole on Friday night is a more popular watering hole. So where is everybody else on campus going tonight? I swear we've seen 5 of those kinds of pitches over the last 6-7 years. So find a problem that's probably, in my mind, a little bit more important than that, but start with the problem. A pitch that did really well 2 years ago was a pitch for students on campus who had torn their ACL doing things like skiing, and now they can't get around campus. It's too far to go anywhere on crutches. So they literally had a solution, like a golf cart solution for going around campus and getting students where they needed to go. So, and that one did incredibly well. They won a ton of money. So do start. It's really important to think about this as starting with the problem. Then your next slide is what's your solution to that problem. So if students can't get around campus, what's your solution? Is it golf carts? I mean, there's a lot of other solutions actually to that problem. So this is a really great time to talk about why is your idea special? What's it? Why are you uniquely? Think of this as a lock and a key. There are many different ways to solve the crisis of plastic. What's the specific thing you're doing? So as an example, I just filled up my water bottle out there, and it looks like the water bottle filler-upper on campus has some kind of scanner so that you can scan a PIPS or something. I'm not sure what this is, but it looks like you can be a part of a program. So there's a stickiness to it. So not only are you filling up your water bottle, but you are, either accruing points or you are part of Team CU that you're trying to beat other schools. I don't know what that is, but it's a pretty good idea because it's trying to get people to be more sticky with using the water refill stations. So you're looking, there are a billion ways to solve this. Oops. There's a billion ways to solve this. What's your specific way to do this that brings it down to something that you can actually do? So your solution, is it a mechanical tool? Is it an app? Is it a way of getting people to behave differently to reduce, recycle, reuse? So your solution, and like here, I just pulled up a picture of a team who's solving recycling. This, starting a company that goes out on the street in front of Leeds and tries to get people to recycle cups, that is one solution. There are a billion others. So something like that is your one simple slide on your solution. Be super careful about, don't over dive too far into the details. So people really don't want to see too much about how you make this happen. They just want to know that it can happen. So one of the winning pitches 4 years ago was Artemis Robotics. And they actually did, for the final thing, they brought out a working pump that showed, just really quickly in about 10 seconds, they say, we have these artificial muscles that work like this, and it's going to solve this specific problem in their first industry. I can't remember what was their first industry at the time, but it was really concrete, it was really short, and it was really gripping. And they either took first or second place with their idea. Okay, my gosh, that's going to drive me nuts. So I'm going to go on and move that backwards. Slide number 5 is your market size. So if you Google this again, there's a lot of ways to talk about how big is your market. Usually you talk about it as a total available market, or TAM, and then a serviceable market, and then a SOM at the bottom is TAM, SAM, SOM. The SOM is what you think you can do. How much market share do you think you can get? This is worth noodling around on. It's going to be worth having a decent slide. A really simple slide for this, I don't think I threw one in, but is basically a Venn diagram. You know, just a big circle. This is how big the total market is. This is how big a serviceable market is, or part of it that we think we can eventually get to. And then what's the little bitty thing that we're going to try to conquer first as our beachhead market. So I can talk a lot more about how to figure out your market size. And I'm going to just take questions. I'll come back. Actually, raise your hand if you're curious about this, but otherwise we'll come back to it at the end. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just very, it's much easier for us to find the available total market size, but we're struggling to pare it down into what is actually available, what's serviceable, and what percentage, if like,
yes,
you know, if we're not developing a product that already exists, we're developing a different product, how do we know how much of the available market actually leads into that?
Wonderful. Okay, so what he's asking about is the total market versus the other markets. Like, how in the world do you get there? So there are two ways usually to get there: a top-down model and a bottom-up model. So you could start with what you think you can do and then build up, or you can start with the total market and go down. But let me just talk about total markets for a minute. I think this is really hard the first time you try to get into this, because either you're doing something like changing the robotics industry, which turns out, you know, you look it up and it's something like a $45 billion industry. This is really hard to grasp, like how much of this might I actually change? So that TAM, the total available market, is really often, I mean, that's a Google search. And you're going to make some estimates and you're going to try to make an informed decision, but you're probably not going to have a really great answer for that. You just want it to be supportable, so that if you get Brad Feld sitting on the front row who pings you on it and asks you how you got that, you can say, this is, you know, this is based on numbers that I found on this website. So that's, you're going to get a total market for how big is recycling? You know, how big is recycling market today? The much smaller one at the bottom, your serviceable market, is much more, it's a guesstimate, and it's much more based on what exactly are you doing? How many of, like, if you're making a machine that sorts plastics better, so how many plastics sorting machines are in the country today? Can we make some guesstimates around that? So you're going to do a little bit of Google research. How many recycling centers are there? How many in recycling centers, how many sorter machines are there? And then, do they sort this kind of plastic? So you're going to narrow it way on down to the specific idea you have, and try to, and then make an estimate on, you know, let's just say that there are 6,000 plastic sorters today of this type in active use in the US. That's your guesstimate. So we think that we're going to be able to actually start with the percentage of them that are in Colorado, because we think that we can make the contacts at 6 recyclers on the Front Range who are willing to work with us. So that's really what our serviceable market is to start with. It's much smaller and it's practical. So, and it's really okay for that to be a small number. It's you know, single digits of what the total available market is, because you're trying to prove that you understand that this is an overwhelming problem to solve, and you're going to start with a very small piece of it. So let's stop there. We can come back to this because it's tricky for sure. Okay. Slide number 6 is your advantage over current solutions. So I love this one because I think that we so often forget about what the competition is. So the thing with recycling is that there are certainly, we were just talking about a mechanical sorting solution to the problem of recycling. But we also just talked about trying to get people to simply reduce the amount of plastic by using more refill stations for water bottles. There are so many different ways to solve this, and it's important to understand that your competition is not just other recycling machines or other water bottle refill programs. There's a lot of ways to solve this problem, and you kind of want to express that. You know, there are different competitive ideas. We think ours is going to work because we think it's a really good approach, and we think there will be a lot of customer interest in it. We think people will really want to do this, or will want to buy it, or they'll really like it. So you want to distinguish among all the different ways to solve a problem. Why is your way particularly interesting? So I see this, I'll just point out, this one's a secret pitfall for me. I see this all the time. And I was on a due diligence call today with a really cool atomic layer deposition company. And you know, their idea of what their competitors was totally different from my idea of their competitors. So you know, they thought that they were competing on manufacturing capability, and I thought they were competing on physical deposition quality. So there's just many different ways to solve problems, and you want to be specific on, you know, how are you outcompeting? I wanted to just give you this super simple example because this is classic. This is a great way of just showing, you know, usually you go across our idea does these 3 or 4 great things. The other competitors don't do those. So typically you have a check mark all across, you know, the main target, the market entry, the long-term research, you know, what's on this slide doesn't really matter. The point is you would check all of your boxes. Your competitors don't have those same advantages. So a simple slide like this is one way of doing that. There are plenty of other great ways of talking about who your competitors are and what they do. Okay, slide 7 has so much underneath this to unpack. Validation and traction. So this is a really important point in the New Venture Challenge that the judges are going to be looking for in spades. They really want to know not that you've had a good idea, but that you've gone out and validated it. So how do you validate that you've actually found a really interesting problem and that you have an interesting solution? How do you do that actually? Any ideas? Yeah. Spot on. Yeah. Okay. I have to quit now because you just nailed it. We call this customer discovery now, but what it means is you go out and talk to people. So you cannot do this from your classroom. You can't do it from the library. You have to go talk to people and find out, hey, is this actually a really big problem for you? And we teach a lot of these classes. Like I taught a class called Starting Blocks that goes on here. It's free, it's on campus, everybody can do it. And it's a question of going out to ask people, hey, is that plastic? Like, is that actually, I'm getting feedback over there. Is that actually a problem for you? So you're validating that it really is a big problem and that people would do the idea that you're suggesting. So for instance, let's go back to that water refill. I'm really curious if that actually works. So, you know, how would you validate it? You might stand by the water machine, you know, at noon when you've got heavy traffic, watch if people use it. Ask them, you know, if they do use it, ask them why they're doing it. If they don't use it, ask them why not. So that's a really physical way of going out and doing customer discovery, but you can absolutely call people during the time of COVID. So teams that I've seen that do very, very well spend a lot of time validating that people want their idea. This is much, much easier in the world of software and apps. Simple reason, you can throw up, a web page and an A/B, drop from there very easily. In 24 hours, you can have something up on the web and you can drive people to it. You can get feedback almost instantly. Does it get any customer traction or does it not? This is what the majority of teams at Techstars do. So Techstars is still mostly software, and they're in 2 weeks, you can figure out if you've got a good idea that has traction or not online. How many people sign up for it? How many people, try to join or sign up for a wait list to buy something from you? That it's a really common technique. And it's incredibly helpful to know if your business makes sense or not. So there's so much more to be said on that. But what I would encourage you to do is validate that people really like your solution to the problem and that they buy what you're doing. Yeah.
So, from my prior understanding, I thought customer development was not the product yet. It's asking people about the issues.
Yeah.
in that market, and then asking if they like something.
Yeah. I just delighted the two. I put them together. So what I teach on a daily basis is customer discovery. And that is where you don't actually try to tell them about your ideas. So best case scenario, if you have the time, is you go see what they are doing today, or you see how they behave today. So, and you go find out what their problems are today. That's the real heart of customer discovery, is validating that there's actually a problem to be solved. Then the next part of that is customer development. Well, hey, if I made a device that did XYZ, or if I made an app like this, would you actually use it? So that's more the customer development. I would strongly encourage you, to the extent you can, to start with customer discovery. Be really curious about how people are solving this problem today, or how people are actually behaving with the water cooler today. So what are they doing today? And then would I actually be able to get them to change their behavior? So that's the heart of your business, because you really want to know, would they pay for your app? Would they pay for your actuator? Would they pay for whatever it is you're doing? That's really the question you want to get to. And traction is the advanced form of that. It's really cool. We have had people in the New Venture Challenge who have already had some traction. So they've jumped on it between now and March. And, if they were doing a pizza delivery service, maybe they've already sold a few pizzas. So they've shown that their pizza is good enough to sell. They've shown that somebody would buy it. They've actually delivered a pizza. That kind of traction is very intriguing to all of the judges, because again, it fundamentally validates that you've got a good idea, that people would buy it. So if you've got something like an app that can be used by people, it is wonderful to show that early traction. It's obviously incredibly harder if you're in physical space of making a piece of hardware. But a really good example was Shine On a couple of years ago. Mechanical engineering team and business team, they were an amalgam, which always makes them stronger. And they were making bike lights that were kind of dual use bike lights. So it would look forward and then it would shine on you. So it was a safety feature that it would kind of light your space as you're going down a dark road. And Shine On was not able to have their device ready, but they rigged a prototype model. They let people try it And they got feedback of, yes, I would buy it. Yes, here's a price point. They got people to sign up on a list for, an early, expression of interest. So that kind of traction with customers is really helpful. So it both helped Shine On to do really well. They were finalists, but they were a team that then went on to Catalyze, which is an accelerator here in the summer. And they were able to push this through, put together a supply chain and actually sell sell bike lights. So super cool. Anybody have any questions? Is that kind of, this one to me is really important. I think showing the problem is important, and then showing that people really like your solution is important. Yeah.
What if we're still like in the development stage and we don't have a product for them to test?
Yeah, that's fine. Again, what you're interested in is feedback in your concept. I'm sorry, I'm not sure where the amplification is coming from, so I'll try standing here. So most teams will not have that. What they will have is, we talked to 43 people who said, basically, to some extent, this is a problem for me. This is an interesting solution. I would be interested in purchasing one. So if it's a product, or, we've had drone companies, and they went and did a test run with local military facility. I can't remember if it was down at the Air Force or up here, but it was pretty cool. They got validation and feedback from people in the field trying out just their demo drone. So if you're not that far along, it's really not a problem. New Venture Challenge is about pitching an idea. It's not as, physical traction is not nearly as important as having a validated idea that people say, yeah, this is really great and I would buy it. So, okay, so this was just an interesting one. When I saw this pitch, he showed us, again, this was for the temperature guy. He's like, look, this is 7 different industries that want to know internal temperature. These 2 are the ones that we think are most interesting because they are easier for us to approach. So he talked people through this, and I don't recall exactly what he said. One looks like oncology, but he talked through that there were all these different opportunities, but here are the 2 that we really think we're going to focus on. Okay, slide number 8 provides some kind of timeline of milestones to de-risk. So to your point, to your question you just asked, you don't have your demo put together yet. You don't have a pilot, but you've got a plan. And it's really helpful to have a plan. The plan's going to change as soon as you put it down, but it's really great to have some kind of plan. This is a super simple, again, thanks to Luminastra, but I just liked what they did here. It's okay. So as I'm pulling it up, they talked through with animation. Here are the steps that we need to do, and here's how long things will take. So this one's fairly detailed. Again, he'd been working on this for a year, so I'm not suggesting you hold to this standard, but try for it. So try for the milestone of what do you need to do to de-risk this great idea? Do you need to do more customer validation? Do you need to figure out your features? Do you need to figure out a physical supply chain? Do you need to find a software or computer science buddy who's going to help you mock this up? What are the things you need in order to make your idea become a reality, in order to build the business? So this is usually not about when I'm going to incorporate the company, when I'm going to do this and that. It's about what are the steps I need to do to de-risk my idea or my technology and de-risk your team. So when are you going to add team members? What kind of skill sets do they need? Who are the people that you need to bring around you to your idea so that you can be successful? You're probably going to need some advisors, probably going to need some mentors. We've got loads of those here who would love to help you for free. But you're going to need some skills on the ground. Somebody's going to have to just hold this whole thing together. So, we often call this a CEO, but I honestly call this a CXO role when you're really new, because you're going to wear every single hat as you try to, put together a new company. The biggest points on putting together a new company are to get, this pitch is really talking about your product market fit. So, and that is the most important thing for your company. So if you incorporate a company, if you bring in a whole bunch of money, if you bring in the coolest people ever, and you have a crappy product that doesn't actually do what the market needs, none of that matters, right? The fundamental thing is to have that product market fit, have a good idea that meets the market need. And that's what drives success in your company. So that's what the judges will look for, is this problem solution. And then they're going to want to look at this commercialization plan and say, hey, is this somewhat reasonable? Have you talked about this? Have you thought about it? Have you bounced it off a couple of advisors? Have you called Stan to get some feedback? Have you tried to rationally make a plan for what this would actually take to get from point A to point B? Yeah.
Is this where you would include, in addition to that product market fit, your sustainable advantage?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so the question is about your sustainable competitive advantage. So, and that is another way of talking about the competition. So I would probably put it back up earlier in your slides. So here's the problem, here's the solution, here's why our solution is extra special. We think nobody else is doing that. And in fact, here's a look at our competitors. So I think it's very helpful to have a sustainable competitive advantage. That's, that's the usual name for it. But you may not know that yet. What you do want to know is you do want to know who your competitors are. How many people have already thought of upgrading the refillable water station? So, I think 3 or 4 years ago, before COVID, there were like 5 or 6 different refillable water station ideas out there. And I literally saw them in the airport in Seattle. And I had a friend putting a very different model out at DIA. And now you've got these ubiquitous ones in schools. So who are all the competitors in your area? Because you need to know that, like if you're up against Facebook, it's really helpful to know that up front. Okay, intellectual property. If you have intellectual property, you can put it in here. If you don't, that's cool, not a problem. But just if you are filing a patent, good to know. And yeah, we're running out of time, so I'm not going to talk more about that. Feel free to ask me. Slide 10 is vision or next milestones. So where are you going next? Where do you want to be next? The judges love kind of student enthusiasm and saying, we've got a plan. That was that commercialization plan. And we think we're going to accomplish this much. We're going to have that done this summer. So here's where we're going. And then next we're applying for Techstars or Y Incubator in the fall, blah, blah, blah. So a little bit about the vision or how we think we're going to change the planet. That goes over very well. And it kind of, so you've given really practical stuff in the commercialization plan there, and now you're giving the bigger vision of where can we go. I'm not going to talk about it, but again, every once in a while, you've got teams that have talked to somebody, and in that customer discovery that we were discussing earlier, they actually found somebody that wants to work with them. So if you have talked to somebody that says, yeah, come on over. We'd love to see this. We'd love you to bring your demo over to our place, or we'd love to give it a try when you're far enough along. You can pop that in here. Again, that is another way of showing traction, that somebody liked your idea. Somebody said, this is cool. I'll jump on this bandwagon. Okay, slides 11 is your team. Usually you do this with like round faces. I think that nobody is writing a paragraph about your team. You don't need to do that, but you do want to show, I don't usually see team pictures like this, but I put it up for a very specific reason. I love that, these dudes in this particular picture are all working together on a really hard project. And they're just like committed. So, the faces are great. the effort that they're putting into doing something that's very clear. And I mean, I think that this is a very gripping picture. It's not mine, obviously it's CU's, but but at the team, you want to just talk about, why is our team strong? Why does it work well together? It could be that, you're working with somebody in the humanities school, somebody in the business school, and somebody in the engineering school. Or I got a physicist, and some of the law students are freaking awesome to have on your team. So I got a physicist and a law student. So why do these complementary skills help build what we're trying to do? So talk a little bit about, who you are and why is it good. Last one, just a summary image of the future showing the results. So this is one that I particularly liked. Whoever this doctor is, Mr. Heart Surgeon, if you can make these for $500 a piece, send me a box and I'll start using them tomorrow. So this again goes right to your point about, I don't have the box yet. That's okay. What was really cool was, he had gone into customer development at this point. They had asked this doctor, and the doctor's like, I love this idea. So if you can end on some kind of quote like this, it's a really strong way of saying, this is cool, this is great. Somebody wants it out there. Any questions on this one? Because this is perhaps one of my favorite slides. So you're ending strong with this huge validation, and yeah, people love it. I will just show you that this is a different way of doing a final slide. Now that I kind of think about it a little bit, so this is from Rocky's Venture Club. And Rocky's Venture Club loves this as a final slide. And the reason is that you're going to stand here for another 5 minutes and take questions. So what they love is you've got all your material right here, and it kind of keeps it fresh right there for your audience to ask better questions. So this is kind of cool. And you can certainly do this, or you can do the one before, strong validation. So either of these looks kind of wrapped up, professional, got our stuff together. We know what we're talking about. Okay, so that was all the slides that you're going to need for your presentation. Again, you can have the deck, you can work through this. I want to jump briefly into what makes a great slide. So again, this idea of the, value proposition up front, make things really short, make them tight and specific, and do not just talk about your technology. That's a bomb. It just doesn't work. So keep your content really focused. Do simple pictures like this. And again, this picture is from Rocky's Venture Club. They love this sucker. They show it every single time. What you want to do is, the less words you have, the more that you maintain control of the conversation and people watch you. I put up that, the black on gray, and I watched everybody's eyes look up at that rather than looking at me. And when you're giving a pitch for New Venture Challenge, you really want people to get an image. Picture says 1,000 words. You want them to feel the emotional impact, and then you want them to watch you telling them why this is so great. So I love this picture. This is from Jacob Siegel. He does prosthetics. So this is, building for an amputee a new hand. Imagine somebody can touch again. I mean, this is really cool. And so what an impactful picture. And then he can talk about the business from here of what he's trying to do, what's the team he's building, whatever it is. I love this big, simple picture. So you can put on, one tagline on it, but keep it really simple, because this is impactful. And when you do like a paragraph of words or 3 different graphs, people are trying to read more than they're trying to hear. That's just the way it works. People read more than they listen. So the slide simplicity just keeps you in charge. So think of it as generally something like 15 to 45 seconds a slide. People can really get locked up and ground down on one slide, and you realize you spent 5 minutes on one slide. Don't do that. You're trying for a more even pace of here's my problem, here's my solution, here's my competitive advantage, and here's how we're actually going to make it happen. And the same thing, I just wanted to show you, for those of you doing graphics, you can just see this is so problematic. I don't even know what it says, but it's horrific. I did read it at one point. I read it when somebody else was giving a talk similar to this. It's like, oh my gosh, don't do that to yourself. You're hamstringing yourself. Do a simple table and then something like arrows that talks through the table as you make your points. So the animation is great. One simple line graph. If any of you put up 3 or 4 charts behind you, I will personally walk up there and smack your hands, because that's just, don't do it. People try to read your data and they miss your message. Okay, quick on public speaking. And you've probably heard all of these before, but make eye contact. Keep it simple. Don't use jargon. There are very few people in your audience who are going to know what a spectrometer is, who know what atomic layer deposition is. They just don't know. So whenever you say that, they smile at you and they think you're probably smart at whatever you're doing, but you're not trying to run a business. So if you want people to engage with you, small, simple words, make contact and get them to stay with you in your story. This is the change. This is what you all want. Remember who the audience is. So I helped to curate judges for this over time, and I'm sure they've got a wonderful roster this year. They are everybody from billionaires who have started multiple companies with squabillions of dollars and made even more squabillions of dollars, down to product managers of really smart and savvy internet companies. So remember that your audience has probably got some startup experience. They are rooting for you. They are not mean. They want you to be successful, but they really want you to be clear. So, and they're going to range in age from say 28, say, to 65. So, so they'll be all over the board. All of them will have had some successes. A lot of them will have made some money. So just FYI, that's who you're talking to. And they will really want to understand, like if they think you've got a good idea in ed tech, then they will want to know how are you going to roll it out to schools. So they're typically going to ask you some pretty pressing questions, but it's, you know, they want you to succeed. They're not trying to jerk your chain. So judging criteria, you don't need to write this down. I put it up here because there's a 2-page form. You can get it. Stan's the man. So grab this information from him. What I want you to know is that they are judging you on your idea and your feasibility of your idea. How feasible is it? I still ask you, getting golf carts all around campus when the campus is crowded with people. I'm just asking. So what's the feasibility? Second question is momentum. How much has your team done to date? I go back to the point that the team who had done 43 interviews to talk to people about what their problem was, and if this was, you know, what kind of solutions were they using today, that customer discovery, that went a long way to showing that they had great momentum. So there's a lot of ways to show momentum, but this is important. Third one is that quality of the presentation. And are your slides clean? Are you conveying a message? Are you telling a story of a problem, drama, a solution? You got to buy our product. You know, are you clear? Okay, and of those, just so you know, the idea, I mean, it's only a third, right? So a great idea is great, but it's 1/3 of your score on this. Your momentum is what they really want to know. You know, are you working it as a team? Are you coming together? Are you getting stuff done? You know, what's your next milestone? So, and then the quality of the presentation is only 20%, but do note that the quality of the presentation is what's going to make your momentum and your idea clear. So again, this is all available information. And I think I'm going to stop there. There are a few mistakes. One of them, don't bore people. Two, be careful with video. It does work, but in live, about 50% of the time, video does not work. And you don't want to be that person that stands up here messing with your devices instead of giving your pitch. It so sucks. So don't do it. I tend to say, don't do video. People do. Just make sure it's bulletproof and get in here before you give your presentation and make sure it's running correctly on this machinery that day. So again, these are background slides of pitching characteristics and pitching no-nos. I'll give you the deck. You can read them through. Don't forget to practice. You'll be better and your presentation will get much better. So, okay, folks, we have done a ton here and we're ready to wrap. We've got 5 minutes. Anybody have particular questions? What would you like to know? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got to run, but
Yeah.
Is this deck going to get emailed out to the sign-in sheet, or how do you get it?
So we're recording this event and it'll be on the website, both the recording and the deck.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're welcome. So I'm going to just say thank you. Really good to have you. And please come forward if you got more questions about your specific ideas.
If you haven't checked in, please check in with Julia here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Yeah, really nice to have you. Thanks.
How are you?
Hi.
You remember me?
Yeah.
From China.
Yeah, exactly. Holy shit. Are you Tyler? Oh my, you should have raised your hand. I didn't see you with the mask on.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my gosh. You just emailed me. You just emailed me. I can't believe.
I know, small world. We're,
Oh, that is fantastic.
Yeah, much better.